Mel, great to see you. I know you just had a whirlwind couple of months of your schedule here, so we appreciate your time. How are you, sir?
Good, Braden. Good to be with you. We don't have Dari with us, so it'll just be me and you today. I tried to get him to join us, but he refused.
It's the only time I get to hang out with you is when Dari's not around. That's how it works.
Had a show today. Yeah.
So can you try to explain to people what your work schedule is like time-wise, like how many hours during the day, the month of the draft, and then the weekend of the draft? Like, what does the actual amount of work you're doing look like for people out there?
Well, the work is basically done, Braden. It's more so just doing all the shows and all the podcast. Todd McShay, Field Yates, and I do a first draft podcast. We do it twice a week. So that's something you have to prepare for and do. And then the TV and then the radio and the .com kind of all comes together every day. So it's really the work when the players, Braden, is done, the ratings, the evaluations. Now you still have to do mock drafts leading up to the draft, but all the work from the standpoint of evaluating players is over. Then it just becomes, what TV shows do you have today, what radio, what .com, what podcasts, all the different things you need to do in terms of talking about the players. But actually hard work of evaluating all the kids and trying to make those final decisions. So it's over probably for me, Braden, around April 1st. I mean, I'll tweak a couple things. You hear something, pro day here, this injury news, some interview, this, that, and the other thing that could be happening. But by and large, majority, I'd say 98% of the evaluations are over by April 1st.
Mel, I always imagine that off screen where I can't see it is just infinite amount of information available to you that you access when you're on a show, when you're on the radio, wherever else. How do you keep all of that sort of in your head? Are you refreshing? Do you have index cards? What's the process there?
No, I have nothing. Usually what I try to do is every time I write something, I'll remember it. So that's when I'm writing something myself, all the reports that I write, everything I do for the Dari and Mel show. Braden's filled in for Dari several times with me. Anything you do for that standpoint, I do the research during the week on basketball, baseball, whatever it may be that we're talking about. And then, but if I write it, I remember it. If I see it, I remember it. So if I'm watching a game, I'll remember what I saw. So I've luckily enough have been able to do that over the years where I don't have to refer to notes. Most all the notes that I have are my notes. So if I have to check a stat or check something, I'll do that. But by and large, I've always been lucky enough to, if I write all the books that I wrote, I could remember what I wrote. If I didn't write it, I wouldn't remember it. So that's always been the way I've operated over the years, which really helps me, as Braden knows. We get those Kiper's Callers segments where you're getting, random calls, which we don't even know, as you know, Brad. We don't know where those calls are coming from. Right. We don't know what these guys and gals are going to ask. So we have no idea until the call comes in, and you can't be sitting there jumping through. Oh, hold on a second there, Pete from St. Louis. Let me check something real. You can't do that. Braden, you got to keep it moving. So you got to be able to, at least in that segment, really challenges you to be able to, talk right off the top of your head and give it an immediate response. You don't have time enough to sift through notes. So I think notes become kind of a crutch for me. If I have them, you become more reliant on them. If you don't have them, you just let it go. And whatever you have, you have. If you don't remember a certain stat, so be it.
It's funny. I think we did take a call on like a North Dakota offensive lineman, and you were ready to go. You were like, boom, boom, boom. You were ready to go with it. And this was months ago.
Normally they're guys you have scouted. Now, if there isn't one, say, hey, you know more about that guy than I do. Maybe I missed them, because there's always going to be somebody will come up with, a player that you just haven't done a lot of work on, or you're not even aware of for that matter. But you should know the NFL guys. The college kids, you can always find they always kid me about it. Kiper knows the third string long snapper at Pittsburgh State and Kansas. No, I don't. That's it. I don't know everybody playing. So you can always stump me on some backup or some guy that was a decent player in college but had no pro potential necessarily. There's a million kids playing college football. So, but you try to do the best you can. And then, like I say, with the radio show, which we know, that's the time where you have to talk off the top of your head. You don't, like I say, right. You do not have time during a 3-hour show where you're getting calls and we're having conversations about, and you could bring up anything. Dari could bring up anything out of the blue. Wait a minute. Let me just check and see what you're talking about. You could go to the internet here. I don't have a computer with me. I don't have a laptop. I don't have anything with me when I'm doing the show. So I'm not sitting there checking anything. I can't Google anything. I can't check a Wikipedia. I don't have any of that with me when I'm doing the radio show.
So what does that look like originally when when the draft first goes to TV, and you're the guy doing this from the very beginning? are you suggest like you started from the very beginning with no notes? You were doing all those draft shows in the 90s and all that stuff. Like you're doing all of that off of the top of your head for 7 rounds, every single pick, 250 plus picks. Have you changed that process, or is it the same from the day one to today?
Well, I'll give you an interesting story. Back in 84 draft, 83 season, 84 draft, I went up to ESPN. It was my first draft with Chris Berman and Bob Lee. We were in Connecticut, okay? We're at a desk, and we got into the second round, and I had no note. I mean, I'm just sitting there with Boomer. We're talking. I didn't have it. We were doing the first round. We got into the middle, I think it was a middle to late second round. We left for a tractor pull, okay? We left the second round to go to a tractor pull. No lie. Wait a minute. A speed car, a speedboat race, tractor pull. We left the NFL draft to go to that, and like midway through the second round, after we had Boomer Esiason in a little box where he was speaking, just audio, and because he had dropped to the second round to the Bengals after he took 3 players ahead of him in the first. So after that interview, I remember a couple of linebackers were drafted, and then we went to second round. We left the draft. So no, we didn't have 7 rounds. I remember being there. I can't remember what the year was. I was sitting there on day 2, and we come in on day 2, and you'd meet with the media. You just come in, dress casually, no TV responsibilities. We're just sitting there to enjoy relaxing and hearing the names called and talking to everybody. Well, Freddie Godelli, who produces now, has been a great producer over the years, has done the Sunday Night Football he was sitting there. And he was produced it. I said, Freddie, why are you here for day 2? He said, no, I'm scoping this out because next year we're televising every pick. And I don't remember what year it was. I said, wow, every pick you're going to be here for. And from that point on, that's what we've done. So in the early years, we barely got into the mid-second, late second round, and that was it. So it was a different ball game then. But to answer your question, Braden, no, I have never referred to. Now, when I had the draft report and we got in, I'd always check and have things highlighted. Yes, you have to refer to things when you get in there. You can't remember all those numbers, all those stats and evaluations when you get into the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. So I would refer to that then when we were doing highlight packages. I'd have a couple notes of things I had to touch on that we didn't when we did the conversation. But other than that, like bullet points, I really never had anything else that I had to read from or rely on to get through the draft.
What's your proudest sort of late round moment in the sense of, there's a lot of people that maybe you've looked at on tape once or twice and it's a difficult recall or whatever. What's like somebody who hops out at you as, I got this one. I nailed this one.
Well, Steve, it was Tom Brady. Actually, they played it back. It was so funny to see that back because Tom Brady from Michigan, he wasn't upstairs. He was at Michigan, and he had a guy. He was expected to be maybe a 4th round pick. He goes in the late 6th round. I remember when we do the highlight packages after we talk about it. I remember talking about Tom Brady. I had a pretty good grade on him. Not as high as some claim in their revisionist history of Tom Brady. All of a sudden, the second round's popped. Had it been the first round. No, they didn't. But everybody, as Brian Billick, my good friend, always said, everybody does revisionist history of quarterbacks. After they're good, you love them. After they're bad, I didn't like that guy. But in terms of Tom Brady, at the end of the 6th round as a compensatory pick, when they had taken a cornerback from Virginia in the 6th round ahead of them, to go back and listen to that evaluation of Brady, when you thought, is he going to make it? Is he not? He ends up being the greatest. When you have the greatest of all time go at the end of the 6th round and a compensatory pick, and you go back to what you said on the air and what you wrote in your report, that's something that you never thought then would be what it is now, where they're still playing it back every day. Every time I do a TV spot, they're playing back the Tom Brady comments that I made. Who would have thought then at the end of the 6th round, this was something we live forever, and you'd be talking about the greatest quarterback of all time. That's just how crazy things go when you start doing the draft. You can't assume anything, and you have to really, Steve and Braden, take every pick that's made seriously to say, hey, this particular player could end up being great. He might be the 7th round compensatory pick. He might be whatever round. It doesn't matter. And the undrafted free agents, look at all those guys that make it big. So you really have to be serious and really realize that, hey, all these kids, this is their day. They could end up being a heck of a lot better than people think.
Yeah, and that he's still playing in 2022. Also, another weird
He'll be
part
playing
of this.
in 2052.
I know. So can you try to explain to people how you even got into this niche? At the time, it was niche. Now it's its own sport with its own life cycle and its own TV contracts and everything. But when they call you up and you go in with Boomer and you're doing the show, like, How was that the thing that you knew you wanted to get into? And did you ever envision where it has become today?
I did envision it becoming what it is today, Brett. So when I say one thing in terms of the evaluation of players, you get some right, you get some wrong, but the draft itself, I always thought could be huge. And I thought that back in high school. I really did. I thought that this is something that, why wouldn't you? If you're an NFL fan of a team or you're a college fan and your players are getting selected, wouldn't you want to be seeing what's happening and be interested in where these kids are going to go? As an NFL team, the only way to improve your team back when I started in 1978 season, 79 draft, and all the way through until free agency. And you guys can educate me on when free agency started. I don't remember. But up until then, there was very few trades in the NFL. The only way to improve your team from one year to the next was the draft. That was it. So why? And back when it was 17 rounds, and it became 12 rounds. Now it's 7 rounds. So there's a lot more players being selected back in the day. And that was the only way you could improve your team from one year to the next. So my thing was, why wouldn't any NFL fan be interested in who these kids are? You couldn't watch more than, when I was a kid, 1 or 2 games on a Saturday. You watched every game basically, right? So you could only see 1 or 2 games. You didn't have access to the information then. You didn't have any internet. You didn't have access to any watching of games. No chance of seeing a Division I AA, Division II, Division III player, okay? Very little chance of seeing a Division 1A player if he wasn't on national TV, and he wasn't with the top team. So I thought this is information they've never had before. They kind of crave this type of information. They're not getting it. Why wouldn't they want it? So when a kid's drafted, from Saginaw Valley State, or a kid's drafted from Portland State, or Florida A&M, why wouldn't you want that information from a smaller school, or from Texas, or from Alabama, wherever it may be? So to me, I always thought it would be something that would be huge. People didn't think so. They were telling me, go get a real job. Nobody cares about the NFL. The NFL didn't want to televise back in the day. They didn't want it to be televised. So again, you fought all the negativity. You fought through all that, all the negative articles, ripping me one side down, the other. You fought through all that to have a belief that in time, this would catch on and be a huge, incredibly huge event, which it is right now. And I always had fans, guys, back in the day tell me, I look more forward to the NFL draft than I do the start of the NFL regular season. That spoke volumes to me. And that resonated with me to say, hey, if a large group of people are telling me this, I don't need to have 100% telling me it. If I got a certain percentage telling me they look more forward to this day, these 2 days, than they do the entire season or the opening week of the season, I think I got something going here. And that's why I always believe strongly in what I was doing. I believe strongly that the NFL draft could be a huge event.
Hope is a powerful drug for those fans. Very much so. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think. That's why you see the Jets fanatics at the draft for so long, because that's their time to shine. They're not 3-13 at that point.
I always say you always love at Christmas morning. You always love everything you get until maybe you try it on. It doesn't fit, right? Maybe it's not, the color doesn't go. But when you open it, you're anticipating it and you love it. And Christmas, everybody's happy. And that's when the picks are made. Everybody loves their picks. Who doesn't like their 6th, 7th round pick or the undrafted free agents they're bringing in? And then you get them to camp and you see, okay, they may not be able to do this. But the anticipation of the draft, as you said, the hope, Steve, of what's going on. Braden and I have talked about that a lot, about teams, about the differences of opinion on all these players. I mean, one team loves a player, the other team says, I don't like that guy. And then he gets to camp and all of a sudden we'll figure it all out. So I think it's just the build up, the anticipation, the hope, as you said, all that plays together. And it also brings college football and the NFL together for those 3 great days, the end of April, when you haven't had football really outside of spring practice and spring games since January. So and then it gets you fired up for the start of the season. The schedule's coming out. All these things football wise are something where you haven't had it, you want it, you crave it. It brings college football and the NFL together for those 3 days. I always say, what could be better than that?
Mel, how do you evaluate your performance year to year in the draft? Because do you look at it kind of as people are being drafted, or does it take longer to sort of evaluate your evaluation of players?
I never care one way or the other, Steve. I never really look back. I always try to look forward, because as soon as the draft's over, I was last night spent till 2:45 in the morning looking at guys for next year's draft. That's not, I can show you the list. I got like stat. This guy, I got to remember this guy. I remember seeing a little bit of him because I keep notes during the course of the games about guys that are underclassmen. And I have a check mark where I highlight a guy. Oh, I got to take a look. So that's what I'm doing now. And I spend the whole summer doing that. So does Todd McShay. In fact, he has his way too early mock draft coming out tomorrow. You can believe it. So there's really no time to look back, Steve, and say, well, how did I do where I missed? You're going to miss players. And a lot of times, and I'm not going to say that's the NFL's fault. It's my fault. I was wrong. The NFL didn't coach them. There's all kind of variables, whether it's an injury, whether it's going to the wrong team, whether it's an organization in year 2 changed their entire coaching staff. They didn't have continuity. There's a lot of factors that determine whether a player like Trayvon Walker, right? He can be great if he's coached properly. And that's up to Brenton Buckner, the defensive line coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars, to take him and make him use his hands, better technique, be a little twitchier. You think about a guy like Tyler Smith coming to Dallas, right? He'll be a right tackle, hopefully. Well, he sloppy with the technique. I say it was a penalty waiting to happen. But like, oh, Kiper, hey, no, I like Tyler Smith because the penalty waiting to happen already happened in Tulsa. Okay, he had 16 penalties. They can coach him and correct those things. That's Joe Philbin, the offensive line coach for the Cowboys. This is a mean, nasty, tough kid with really good athletic. He can be really good. So I think Tyler Smith, I think Trayvon Walker. You go to a couple other kids and you say, okay, New Orleans, Trevor Penning in New Orleans, right? You have Doug Marone's the offensive line coach in New Orleans. He's going to be a key to Trevor Penning coming out of Northern Iowa. Can he be a starting left tackle with the Saints right away? So all these coaches, they always say, Vinny Serrato, a good friend of mine, was a GM in the NFL. And then he said, they have coach in front of their name for a reason. That's always resonated with me. Coach, whatever. You're a coach. You can't get finished product. If we had all finished products, we would need 50 million assistant coaches. These teams have like 24 coaches now. They got 2 coaches with the linebackers, 2 coaches here. Every player's gonna have a coach before we in another 20 years, every player will have a coach. So coach these guys. You're not going to get finished products coming out of college, especially with these kids coming out with very limited experience in some cases.
What's interesting is on broadcasting and how media has evolved into bigger business, and certainly the draft is definitely qualifies into this bigger showcase now, where you're not only just sort of evaluated on what you think about a player, like your picks and predictions and evaluations, but it's also a media job where you have to sort of be the performer on set, like everybody on TV or radio has to be. And I think what's interesting about your career is that you it's almost like you had the brand of who you were personality wise, and the hair and the whole thing and the glasses, like you had that almost from the beginning. And not only were you allowed to deploy this brand to people, but it didn't affect the way you did your job evaluating players, right? I think that marrying those two things together is what makes a great broadcaster.
Really, Braden, I don't even think about it. Those things happen, organically and spontaneously. You can't plan anything. McShay and I never talk about anything going into a podcast, a TV spot. He'll say things and I'll get fired up. I'll say something. I'll get him fired up. We push each other's buttons, but we know we can get a reaction. I know I get a reaction from him on certain things, but I always wanted that. And Todd's been phenomenal to come along because I didn't have that, and then now I have somebody that I can do a show with and say, okay, you have your opinion, I have mine, and we can debate. He's a lot younger. He has a different viewpoint, and that's phenomenal. So I think all those things that have happened from 1983, 84 till now are all just spontaneous things. Same thing when we do the radio. But I don't know what you're going to say. I don't know what Daria's going to say. I just react to it. You react to it. We say different things. We argue. We debate. We have fun, and it's all forgotten. We move on to the next day. So I never go back and evaluate. To Steve's question about I don't evaluate anything I've ever done on the air, away, evaluations. You learn from your mistakes. And I have gone back to answer your question, Steve, about going back and Braden about going back to report. I will say, why did I miss this guy? Why did this guy have a lower grade than he should? Why did this guy have a higher grade than he should have? I shouldn't have been as high on this kid as I was. You go back to that. But to go back to I wish I would have said this, I don't worry about that because it's all happening instantaneously. It's like you fly by the seat of your pants. The draft is nothing scripted. Nothing is scripted. We have no notes, nothing scripted. The only notes I have is when I refer during highlights to something I want to see that I missed. But when we're reacting on camera, I'm looking at that camera. There's no teleprompter. I'm looking at a camera. So I'm staring at the camera for the whole 3 days. You don't have time to worry about that. Now, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have things you wish you would have said differently. Sure. But that's our 3-hour show, Daria and Mel, Braden, when you come on, did you look back? I wish I would have told Kiper this. I wish I would have said, you may not. If you're going to worry about that, then you're not going to have a great life. Okay, you're going to be a very unhappy. I look back when I'll be a very unhappy person if I tried to critique every time I went on a radio or TV or did a podcast what I did wrong. There's a lot of things I did wrong. You just can't dwell on them. You got to move on.
Steve liked that answer.
I'm sorry. That's fantastic. I'm interested because there has been this kind of fandom that's grown up around you and your work. I mean, you've got a very specific look. Fans have a lot of fun with that. What's the most interesting kind of fan interaction you've had here over the years?
Oh, it's crazy because the hair has been the big talk. The glasses didn't come, guys, until I don't know what year when I said, I got to get some glasses. Yeah. So I got one seeing, but I said it. But the glasses didn't come into the equation until whatever year. I don't even remember what the year was. But the hair was, as McShay says, the Fabio look. I wasn't trying for anything. It was just long and I let it go. It was 1983. I don't remember. I was 23 at the time. I didn't really worry about that. Kim hated long hair. My wife, when we got married in '89, she cut it. Everybody at ESPN loved Kim more than they did before because she finally got my hair cut. So it is a lot shorter than it was back in the day. You can see the pictures. But the hair was getting talked about when it wasn't a big deal. It was almost like they still thought I had the 84 look in 2004, and I didn't. So I was always wondering, like, why are they talking about the hair? I didn't get that. I said, what, am I going to shave it? Maybe I'll shave it one day and it'll be over and done with. I almost felt like doing that because it got too much discussion. The commentary, talking fast, I always got that. All the different things. And I ended up, it was so funny because I always they used to put these papers that send me all these articles. And Kim would put them on my desk and say, everyone was negative. It was like, if you read these articles, guys, you would retire. Okay, you'd say, I'm in the wrong business. Because if you read anything, they were ripping me up one side, down the other, and I'm reading them after. I'm going into the summer with this. What? I'm not reading this stuff. People have their opinion, but I don't need to read it. You can say. So I stopped even looking at it. I remember Tony Kornheiser, good friend of mine. Tony, with Mike Wilbon, with PTI. Tony used to write the worst scathing articles about me. If you pulled them up, and I got to know Tony, I said, Tony, use it. He said, no. All I did was they told me write an article about Kiper. I pulled my article last year, reworded it. It was negative. I read it again. I wrote it again. He said, I didn't know what the hell. I'm going to rip you. You're doing a draft. Who cares? So all that stuff, when you get to know these people, it wasn't any big deal. They didn't know me at the time. And then when I got to know them, I've become good friends with a lot of these guys, Tony Kornheiser being one of them. Tony's great, but at the end of the day, I didn't know Tony at all. And I'm reading this. I say, he's writing all this stuff. Well, guess what? I'm writing critical things about players too. And there's a lot of families that hear nothing but they hear my analysis. So we're critical. We give critical analysis too. So if people are going to be critical of me, it's a little hypocritical to be upset with people who are ripping me when I'm kind of doing the same thing to some players. So I just looked at it as it's an opinion. Everybody has the right to their opinion. I have a right to my opinion. So Bill Tobin said what he did back in the day, and I always respected that. People think I hate Bill Tobin. It was the best comment he could have made. The comments that he made were phenomenal. They lived till the day we play him back on the Dari and Mel show all the time. So he had a right to defend his team. He had a right to defend his picks. He had a right to say what he did. And that's like I was like Scrooge on Christmas morning. That's what I've become, So he has a right to defend his picks, and I respect everything Bill said. And I think and actually Duke Tobin, his son's doing a great job with the Cincinnati Bengals right now. Bill's even with that organization like that. And Bill's brother, Vince Tobin, was a great coach. I have nothing against Bill Tobin, never have. What he said, I kind of agreed with it. I did agree with it. Defend your team, defend your picks. If you want to go after me, so be. I just remember that day like it was yesterday, how it all unfolded. And I can still picture what was said by Freddie Godelli to me in my ear about, we're coming to you in this camera and reacted with Bill Tobin saying. I said, I didn't hear what Bill Tobin was. I'm getting ready for the next. I'm talking to Joe Theismann. I had no idea. And he said, well, talking to the camera. I said, well, what do you want? What am I reacting to? Just know he's ripping you. And I reacted to that. So I reacted to Bill ripping. Chris Mortensen was interviewing when we're doing interviews. I don't really pay much attention because we're getting ready for the next pick. I'm talking to Boomer. I'm talking to Joe Theismann on the set. And I didn't even know what was going on with Bill and Mort. I had no idea until Freddie said react to that. So that's how that all unfolded in what it was, 2004, I guess. That's awesome. It was 1994. Yeah. 1994 it was when that all happened.
Yeah, definitely not high definition yet in 1994. So I'm assuming that Kim is the one who reads all the mentions on Twitter and then reads them to you. Is that what's happening now? I assume you are not on social media, right?
I am on Twitter. I used to do Twitter chats, guys, back when I started. I don't know what year it was. I'm going to go on Twitter. Well, they didn't like that because you're putting out too many tweets. It was like
you're giving it away for free.
Yeah, it was rapid fire. I did an hour of tweets, okay? And I was like one after another, ain't like that. So they're ripping me for doing too many tweets when I wasn't doing enough. So I just put up stuff on Twitter here and there, basically to let people know what I'm doing.
But I mean, you're not in the mentions where people are responding to you and critiquing you and like reading all that stuff, right?
I always tell people, Braden, I don't know what you're saying. I don't listen. I don't read any articles that are written about me. I don't listen to anything from print or social media. I don't read any of that now. So whatever they're saying, whatever you're saying about me on Twitter, I have no clue what you're saying. You're kind of wasting your time. Because I'm not reading it and not getting to me. I don't even think Kim checks it. So nobody checks it. So whatever people are saying on Twitter about me, they can knock yourself out, you know?
Scream into the void all you want to. Mel doesn't care.
With a howl to the moon, because I'm not hearing you.
Yeah. Steve, I want to ask him about the Titans real quickly before we end. So, Steve, do you have anything else you want to go to here before we get into the Titans?
So I want to ask, have you had any, what's the best endorsement pitch that's been made to you over the years? Because I'm sure you've had some people come to you and say, you know, we'd really love for Mel Kiper to be the face of X. There's got to be something good in there.
There was the Just for Men, obviously, hair color. So we did that last year. I'm waiting for Ready Whip, guys. I mean, I'm the Ready Whip king. I mean, I got Ready Whip guys. Rick and Dave and in New York, they sent me Ready Whip fat-free whipped cream because I've pumpkin pie and fat-free. Ready Whip has not called me, Steve and Braden. Ready Whip has not called, Braden. Can you believe it?
Where's your agent at? Where is your agent at on this?
What else can you do? I mean, I got fat-free whipped cream everywhere on the tables. I got it on every Ready Whip. I can get you the kid. Like they sent me a dozen of them yesterday in the refrigerator right there. With the little light blue can, you know, fat-free Ready Whip. That's the one I'm expecting something from. But Ready Whip just evidently is not interested. But I'll keep getting my Ready Whip fat-free whipped cream. But no, other than that, really, the Just for Men. I don't think, Steve, anything else. No. Nobody else is.
This is a missed opportunity, America.
Yeah,
this is ridiculous. Missed opportunity.
I can already see the Ready Whip in the form of the hair, like on the top of your head. Like it writes itself, Mel. It writes itself.
See? Yeah.
All right. So quickly here, we'll let you go, man. We really appreciate your time, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on. Forget the AJ Brown trade. Once the AJ Brown trade happens for the Tennessee Titans, because that's sort of like you have to separate that from the equation. But once it happens, they have these picks. They have all these picks. They're on the clock at 18. They trade out at 26. How do you think the Titans handled after the trade took place? How do you think they handled matching value and need and quality with their entire draft?
Yeah, I think you look at when your AJ Brown trade it happened, then you say, okay, how are we replacing him for Ryan Tannehill and what happened at the end of the year? And you get a guy, everybody says he's the perfect comp. Comps are always best case scenario. So with Burks, that's the best case scenario. He can become AJ Brown. I think the draft was really impacted with Malik Willis. I think that's the most fascinating. Everything. There's certain picks he's saying 20 years from now, what are you going to remember? You know, we're going to remember Malik Willis going in the third round to the Tennessee Titans. How does this play out? Is this a big deal? Is this the heir apparent? Is this a guy who can beat out Ryan Tannehill in a couple of years? Or be the heir apparent? Is this a guy that's going to be spectacular? Or is he going to be just a guy who we thought had a lot of talent? We know has a lot of talent, but it never really came together in the NFL. Is he going to be an accent piece? Is he going to be like Trey Lance in San Francisco? Is he going to be like Lamar Jackson was early in his career, that first year in Baltimore with Joe Flacco, where he ran the ball really effectively and gave defensive coordinators so much to think about? I want to see how Tennessee works him in because his legs, his running skills are outstanding. He's deceptively fast. He's deceptively strong. He's powerful. He's tough. They can have packages for him to run the football. And Tannehill and defensive coordinators, between Tannehill and Malik, you can give a lot. You have a lot to worry about and a lot of sleepless nights. So they can work Malik in without having him worry about. He's not going to start. He's not going to be a factor for another couple of years. You knew that coming out of Liberty with the things he needed to work on. But with his ability to run the football, you can give him packages that will really, I think, benefit this Tennessee offense. So I think this draft is going to be defined by what Malik Willis, how they utilize him and what he develops into.
I know you've been asked a million times to sort of grade everybody, so I'm not going to ask you that, but they get Roger McCreary in the second round. They come back and they get Hassan Haskins. They get the tight end out of Maryland. They get Kyle Phillips. They get Chance Campbell. They get all these pieces. Are there any, outside of Malik Willis, are there pieces in there that you love more, hate more than some of the others?
You made a big mistake there, Braden. You had mentioned too many of their picks because you got to my Calvert Hall guy. I'm Calvert Hall. Chance Campbell's Calvert Hall. I've known Chance forever. I've known the family forever. He's a great kid. He's a kid who was a leading tackler at Maryland, leading tackler at Ole Miss. He was the difference maker on that Ole Miss defense, went from bad to good. Chance he'll be always the smartest football player on the field defensively. His football IQ is through the roof. And he can run it around under 4.6 at the combine, vertical almost 40 inches. So Chance is going to be, I think, a guy who can help you right away on special teams and be a factor. Kyle Phillips, I compared, my comp was Hunter Renfrow. And I think he can be that kind of guy. He had a couple of drops here and there, but he could be a Hunter. He's quick out of his break. He understands how to get open the slot. I think he's a Hunter Renfrow type. I think Roger McCreary had a first-round grade going into this year. Now, he doesn't have great length. But as a cover guy, I saw some quick guys beat him at times. 101, his recovery ability, doesn't have great arm length. But he's a guy who played a lot of football, seasoned veteran. I think Roger McCreary will help that secondary. So overall, they got a lot of guys that can play the game at a solid level. They got some guys that are going to help this team on both sides of the ball. So I thought it was a solid draft overall for the Tennessee Titans. Now, everybody's going to say you could have this guy. And I haven't really – I go over that more so as the summer when you look back and say, this particular player or that particular player they could have had after we see how they evolve. But that's revisionist history. And that's easy to do once they're in camp, once they're playing. You try to not even worry about that to an extent because that's not defining a grade of a team. So overall, for the players they got, if one of those late round picks they hit on, like I'm talking about, I mentioned a couple of those kids, then it's a really good draft. If they don't, then it becomes an average draft. So this will play out in the long run. But they like everybody. I thought everybody, even the C+ teams I gave New England, that got good football players. Did they reach a little bit, New England, based on our grades? Yeah. But for them, it wasn't a reach. Yeah. They took guys they liked, and we didn't have a problem with kind of football players they took. So even the teams that got the C+ grades got a lot of good football players, in my opinion.
Do you believe that Nicholas Petit-Frere can play guard, or is he just a tackle?
I think he's a right tackle. Yeah. I think that's when he was at his best. Left tackle, the quick guys got a little bit of, and even then he held his own, more than held his own. You go back to Karlaftis, Petit-Frere played pretty well. He played really well in a lot of those games. So yes, I have a versatile guy like that that's been battle tested in the Big Ten, has gone up against really good pass rushers in practice at Ohio State. I thought he could be a second round pick. And nobody would have argued. I thought he could have, at one point in time, I thought maybe he was going to be a late one during the season. So where they got him, it made a lot of sense.
Mel, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. I know you've had a really busy time, and I guess you get to relax a little bit here, but we really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time, man. We do.
Braden, Steve, that was a lot of fun, guys. And I can't wait till you're back with the Dari. Dari takes a little vacation. Braden, hop in.
Hey, you feel free to text my bosses, okay? I'm not gonna hate you for that. I'm not gonna hate you for that.
Hey, you send me a bad dozen fat free with fat free creams. I'll go there quicker.
In the mail right now.
In the mail.
Thank you, bud. Guys. Appreciate it, bud.
Take care, man. See you, pal.